Hello! Thank you, Tori and Sarah, for that beautiful introduction. I am thrilled to be here with you today discussing, is your investment property working for you? So first of all, let's just take a second and stop and ask ourselves the question, and maybe you've asked yourself this question before. Have you ever sat back and thought, what would you do with all of that extra money if you sold your investment property? What would you do with the extra money if you sold your investment property? Would you buy a new car? Would you buy a boat or jet skis? Would you go on a luxurious holiday? Would you pay for your children's education? Would you do other investments? What would you do with that money? It's an interesting question. Top costly mistakes that we see Capricorn Coast property investors making right now is really two parts. The first part is not having the right team of professionals behind them. So it's super important that you have the right property manager, the right lending manager, and the right accountant. You need the right property manager to make sure that they're looking after the longevity of your investment, making sure your asset is well maintained for time to come, making sure you've got the right tenants in place, and maximizing your investment on your return on your investment. You also want the right lending manager to make sure you've got the right finance structure in place, to make sure you're getting good interest rates and keeping your fees down, make sure that you're thinking of or allowing for future investments down the track. You also need a great accountant. No one wants to pay more tax than they need to, and a great accountant is worth their weight in gold. The other area that we see people make mistakes in is not reviewing their finances regularly. So we all have lives that change all the time. We all move from one chapter of life into the next, and our properties age, the market conditions change, interest rates change. There's so many things that happen in life. It is important that you regularly sit down and review your finances to make sure that you've got the right structure for you. And that is a pretty big generalization that can mean so many things to different people. But it's really important that you sit down and review what you're doing regularly. I want to share with you why I love property. I have had a lifelong obsession with real estate. I really have. I'm so passionate about it. Property has enabled Troy and I to create the life of our dreams. It really has. There's so many opportunities with real estate. You can renovate and flip. You can build speckies. You can do developments. You can invest and build a property portfolio. You can just live in a house and enjoy it. There are so many possibilities with property. So that's one thing I love. It's easy to leverage. So unlike some other investments, you can use the equity in your property to buy more property. It's very easy to leverage that way compared to other investments. Property is easy to understand. We all live in a house and have a pretty good understanding of what property is about, and it's so easy to understand. There's so many books and videos and things around that help us all understand further. It's predictable and it's reliable. So we have property cycles, we have so much stats and data to help us analyze the market. It's pretty simple supply and demand basically at the end of the day. So property is pretty predictable, reliable, and easy to understand as well. So if you're sitting there going, well, is my investment property working for me? I can actually really relate to this. I've been in this situation a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples. So Troy and I had a property that it was in Wright Street, so we're going to call it Wright Street. So we had this home in Wright Street that we had lived in for a little while, and we'd actually paid the property off, so we had no mortgage left on it. And we decided we were going to upgrade to a better home. It was a very small home. I actually have some very fond memories of living there, but we decided we would upgrade to a bigger home in a better area. So we did that, and that meant that we were left with a rental property. We rented Wright Street out. We were left with a rental property that had no loan on it, and we had a new home loan where we owed basically the full amount because we'd used the equity in Wright Street to buy the new home. And so then when we reviewed our finances, we decided that Wright Street had been great. We kept it as a rental for a little while, I can't remember, 6 or 12 months. It had been a great property, it had done its job, it had done what we needed it to do, but it was no longer working for us really, and it meant that we weren't set up correctly because we weren't getting any tax benefits from it. or many. So we then decided to sell Wright Street, and we were then able to pay money off the new home that we had bought and also pay for some renovations to that new home. So that put us in a much better position, and we then later went on and bought another rental property that was more suitable, and then that way we were structured the right way. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to give you another example. So then we also had another property that we'd purpose bought as a rental, and it was an older home. The house was probably, like, it had tongue and groove boards inside. It was probably around 100 years old. It was quite an old home. It was nice, and it had just freshly been painted and things when we bought it, and it was in good condition when we bought it. And we tried to keep it well maintained, but we were finding that because it was an older home, there weren't really many benefits from a depreciation point of view, and it went up in value quite a lot, and it was getting to the age, like, it was getting to the stage where it was going to start needing some more maintenance in the next few years. So being that it was an older timber home, we were going to have to repaint it every 10 years basically, and it just needed some maintenance regularly. You know, carpets needed to be updated and things like that. So because it had gone up in value a fair bit, we decided to capitalise on those current market conditions and sell the property. And then we were able to put that money towards building a brand new investment property that gave us a higher return on our investment. It gave us greater depreciation because it was brand new, and it was just lower maintenance. So it worked much better for us, and that turned out to be a great investment, and it was a great decision. So when I think back to these situations, I found that we were putting money in out of our own pocket every month to top up the home loans and to top up maintenance, rates, insurance, and so on. We felt like we were being a little bit held back from doing other things we wanted to do. And both of these properties at the time had been good investments and they'd served their purpose, but by selling them when they were no longer advantageous for us to keep, we were able to move forward and invest in better things for our future, that more aligned for our future. So let me ask you, are you currently in alignment with your investment goals? Is what you're doing now in alignment with where you want to go? Take stock of the situation and ensure you're heading in the right direction. Coming from a finance background, I love a good old assets and liabilities chart. So we've got one here for you, and we'll ensure you get a link to it as well. Take some time and go through the assets and liabilities chart. This is something I like to do personally quite regularly. It's quite straightforward. Just pop in all of your assets, how much they're costing you, what return you're getting, all the details, and at the end of it, add up all the total of all the values, the total of all of the amount owing, so your assets and your liabilities, and then you can work out your net worth. And if you do that regularly, it gives you a really good snapshot of where you're up to, and you can see how much you're growing, which is really rewarding. But that can really just help get a good basic foundation of where you're up to. If you haven't been doing that type of thing, I would highly recommend doing that regularly. And if you don't do it all the time, at least do it when you're thinking about making big decisions. So our lives and our investments are always changing and evolving. So it's really important that we do review the situation. So obviously interest rates in the last couple of years have gone up dramatically. So when you look at this interest rate graph here, you'll see that interest rates aren't really what you'd call historically high, but they went up very quickly. And when we look at the next slide, the rental prices have gone up a little bit, or nice and steady, which is great, but not at the same pace as interest rates. So now we're all left with this gap, really, coming out of our own pocket. And so as an investor, we've got to just sit back and sort of really take stock of the situation, I think, and work out what's best for us. I'm in this with you. So this is actually an example from my investment property, and it's just a quick little example that this investment property works really well as an example because I bought it in January 2022, and I have tracked it a little bit because I've used it as an example before. So it makes a great example because it's fairly recent, and I think a lot of you will relate to this. So I would really encourage you to do this math on your investment properties as well. but this just helps give you an example and a bit of a starting point. So in January 2022, you can see we bought this property. I, to be honest, can't see very well here at all. Now I can see. So we bought this investment property in January 2022 for $380,000. And then of course you can see we had the extra purchasing costs with stamp duty and solicitor's fees and so on. And that brought we used equity in another home to purchase it. So that brought the total loan amount to just under $400,000, $397,531. And at that time, in January 2022, we were paying 2.89% interest. And the repayments, so we actually choose to pay principal and interest repayments, that's just our personal preference for us, but we were paying $1,647 per month for the repayments. And if you were doing interest only, I believe it would have been something like $9.59 per month. So then we were getting $390 a week rent, which is about $1,560 per month. So there was a bit of a shortfall, but it wasn't much that we're putting in out of our own pocket. It worked out really well that it was just a little bit negatively geared. We're paying just around about $100 a month out of our own pocket towards the repayments, and that was on principal and interest, and we're paying the rates and insurance and any maintenance out of our own pocket, and so that was geared really quite nicely. And then we reviewed the situation in January 2023, and the market value of the property was sitting at around about $485, and we were then paying 5.89% interest, and the repayments had gone up a bit then as well. And now, well, the most recent review we did of it was in January this year. Things haven't changed much since then. So the property is now worth probably about $550, which is great. So we've had good capital growth out of that. The interest rate we're now paying is 7.14, and repayments are about $2,650 per month. That's on principal and interest. If it was interest only, it'd be about $2,365. And we're getting $500 a week rent. So our rent has gone up, but not by a lot, not in comparison to the repayments. So we're getting about $2,000 a month rent, but our repayments are $2,650. And on top of that, we've got rates and insurance and maintenance. Versus, you know, when we first bought it, we were only topping it up very minorly. Now it's quite a bit each month. So Troy and I actually recently did the exercise. We were like, okay, how much are we, this is why I've got this information, how much are we putting in out of our own pocket? So we're paying about $3,960 in rates. Insurance is now about $2,112. Smoke alarm solutions is $129 a year. And water has gone up quite a lot as well here in Livingston. So we're now paying about $400 a year in water. So that's really interesting. And I just think that makes a really good example. And you can see how there's that difference between the difference between what we were paying 2 years ago versus now out of our own pocket, and the impact on landlords versus the amount of rent we get in return. So a lot of people are complaining about how rents have gone up, and it is tough on tenants. And don't get me wrong, from an affordability point of view, I can understand that it's very tough on tenants, but it is also very tough on landlords. So as I said, I really do love property, but it's got to be working for you. So is your property positively or negatively geared? We've got a little bit of a worksheet for you here so you can work through and work out if it is actually positively or negatively geared, and how much money you're putting in out of your own pocket each week. And you can look at your rental return. So just make sure you include everything: interest, bank fees, your property management fees, water rates, insurance, smoke alarms, maintenance. People often forget, you know, little things along the way with that, so make sure you add everything up. So what is your investment property costing you? Has the cost of holding your investment property gone up in line with the rent you receive? What is the cost of keeping your investment property? And has the cost of keeping your investment property gone up in line with the amount of rent you're receiving? And I want you to ask yourself, is it still beneficial for you to hold on to this investment property? It's great if it is, and if it's not, that's okay as well. So let's have a look at how you might be able to improve the return on your investment property, because that's ultimately, we all want a good return from our investment property. So I suggest that you book an appointment with your lending manager and have a chat with them and make sure that your current structure is good. See if you can get a better interest rate. See if you need to change the structure to suit the current situation, or if there's anything else you can do there. Consult your property manager and your accountant. Have a chat with them. Your property manager is important to speak to because they know the property well. So have a chat with them and say, hey, is it worth me investing a little bit of money in this property to increase the rent in the long term? You know, they might say to you, yeah, you need to, it'd be great if you put in an outdoor area, or if you built a shed, or maybe a new kitchen, or whatever it might be. They might say, oh, you know what, if you put new carpets in, or a really common one here would be air conditioners in all of the bedrooms. If you do that, you might get a better return. Just for example, just see what they have to say. They might even say something like, you know what, cutting down a few of the trees on the on the boundary might be helpful, or there's endless things. But have a chat to your property manager and see if there's anything they would suggest you do to improve the return on the property. And your accountant might also have some suggestions, so I suggest checking in with them. And the other thing is, make sure you're getting your depreciation schedule done with a quantity surveyor. That could be a really big help for you as well. So we've looked at how much you're paying out of your own pocket. We've looked at some ideas to possibly improve your rental return, but if all of that's still not quite in alignment for you, maybe it is time to actually sell that investment property. And then you can move on and do some other things. Like we said, maybe you buy a new car or a boat, or maybe it's investing in something that's actually more in line with your goals. So if you're thinking about selling, remember, we work for you, the seller, not for the buyer. And we have an amazing supportive team and a fantastic processes in place to make this easy for you. So the next slide here is going to talk to you about how much would it cost to sell your property. Do you have a mortgage on the property? If you do, you need to contact your bank and get a payout figure. It's not just the amount you owe, it's a payout figure that you need. You will also need to talk to your accountant to find out if you have capital gains tax and things like that to consider. And then we've got a list of some of the other costs you might want to consider. So you'll need to pay a conveyancer. You'll also have things like advertising, our commission, any maintenance you might want to do to the property, and of course, as we said, your mortgage payout and capital gains tax. So we will require some information from you. We need to know who your property manager is, how much rent per week your tenants are paying, when your lease expires. We'll also need some other information about the property, and we can sometimes get some of this from your property manager. We will need things like, it's helpful to know your insurance, a copy of your rates notice, a floor plan if you have one, your smoke alarm compliance certificate, your solicitor's details. We need 100 points ID for you. If you have a pool, we need a pool compliance certificate. If you have solar on the property, we need information about that, and anything else that's staying with the property. So just for example, dishwashers and things like that. We try and be very transparent with our buyers, and so we do really need that information. So if you're thinking about selling your investment property, we need to then decide if you're going to sell it with tenants in place or sell it vacant. So it is a lot easier for us to sell a property that is vacant. It really is. But we sell properties with tenants in place all of the time. It is fine. We have a great system in place to do it. It works really well. It's just an extra layer for us to work through, and it can make things just take a little bit longer. So for example, if we're going to go and do an appraisal on a property and we want to go have a look at it, it might take us an extra couple of days to get access and things like that, just as an example. But it's all very doable, and we do it all of the time. We have an awesome process in place. So I'll just quickly talk you through some of the things we do. When we contact the tenant, we'll explain to them that the property will be listed for sale and that their lease does remain in place until the expiry date. We often, in these instances, will target investors if there's already a tenant in the property, and we'll explain that to tenants. Look, our marketing's targeting investors, so you may get to stay on in the property, that kind of thing. We will, if an owner-occupier wants to buy it, we will always give the tenant at least 2 months notice at the end of their lease. And we're keen to work with the tenants, so we'll always tell them that and talk to them about that as well, and just find out what works for them with things like if we can do open homes or private inspections and times and things. So we will always talk to them and find out a bit about their lifestyle to try and work in with them. We'll ask them if they're happy to have their belongings and photos. We'll ensure all the paperwork is done correctly. That includes giving the tenants a Form 10, which is a notice of intention to sell. With the tenants also have to sign a authorization form for their belongings to appear in photos. And of course there's entry notices and things like that along the way. And you know, every time we do an inspection or photos, or anytime we're interrupting the tenant, basically, we leave them a lovely little thank you card, and we generally put a scratchy in there as well, just to thank them for their time, and we know it's a bit of an inconvenience. So one of the other things that we do too, which really helps protect tenants' privacy, but it also makes sure that we're showing your home in its best light, is digital staging. So what that means is we take all the tenant stuff out of the house and put digital furniture in. Now what that means is that the home is being shown in its best light, and it's going to look a lot better than what it would if it was maybe tenants mishmash stuff, because often tenants move around a lot and their furniture might not kind of like fit in a property right, or you know, even though it might be neat and tidy, it just might not be the way you would have it presented if you were trying to sell it. So we can actually put digital staging in it, and that also protects the tenants' privacy and belongings, which makes them feel better as well. So that we find is a win-win for everyone. You don't have to sell with the same agency that is currently managing your property. You can actually sell with any agency you like. We do it all the time. We just work with the property managers from the other agency and the tenant, and it's really straightforward. We do it all the time. So a question we often get asked is, when is the best time to sell a property here on the Capricorn Coast? And the answer may surprise you a little bit. So you may hear down south or on the TV or in books or whatever, often people will say spring is the best time to sell. Nothing wrong with selling in spring here, it's okay. But the actual peak time of the year we find is from just after Easter onwards through to, it does generally stay pretty good through to early spring. That winter season is amazing here for us because, as you know, that's when the weather here on the Capricorn Coast shines, and we have so many people from out of town come. So a lot of our buyers are non-locals, and so when you think about those peak tourism times, that really does help. This year though, we have a very special opportunity. So coming up, we have Anzac Day, and you'll have a lot of people, that's on a Thursday, you'll have a lot of people make that into a 4-day weekend. Then the next weekend, you've got Labor Day, and then straight after that, we're into Beef Week, which represents a huge opportunity to sell properties here on the Capricorn Coast. Pricing strategy is another thing that obviously you need to consider. So if you're looking at selling, what would actually happen is we would organise to go and do an appraisal at the property, and then we'd come back to you with some ideas. What you do need to remember is when you see at real estate advertised offers over, we mean offers over. So 91% of our properties sold in the last 3 months have sold for full list price or more. When you're looking at pricing, jump online and look at what else has been selling. That's best advice I can give you, and get a grip of what's going on with pricing. But what you want to do is look at what has been selling, because that is a fact. That is fact-based evidence of what a buyer will pay. If you are looking at what is listed for sale, that's just what an owner is hoping to get. It's not actually fact-based, it's just an owner's hopes and dreams. So I would definitely look at what has been selling. Time frames, how long does it take to sell a home? That is another common question we get asked. So that's a bit of a how long's a piece of string kind of, I don't have a crystal ball question. How long does it take to sell a property here on the Capricorn Coast? So the average days on market for the Capricorn Coast is 37 days. At real estate's average days on market is just 32. Generally takes from the time we do an appraisal and then get photos done and go live online, around about, you want to allow about 2 weeks, but we can do it faster if we need to. With a rental property though, I would really recommend you want to allow that 2 weeks because we've got to work with that tenant and it can just take a little bit longer. If your investment property is no longer working for you, my team and I would absolutely love to help you sell it. And as we said, now is actually a great time to capitalize on the current market conditions. If you would like to have your property live online in time for Anzac Day, in an ideal world, you would have photos done before Thursday, the 18th of April. Our photographer is booking up fast, but we do have a few spots left. So if you're thinking about selling, my team and I would absolutely love to help you. All you need to do is send us an email and we will arrange a time to appraise your property and get the ball rolling for you. I hope you have a fantastic day and please reach out if there is anything at all we can do to help. Bye.